and return from his near-death experience. However, if I was impatient and not attuned to the slow and subtle responses and injected more Narcan to force a more rapid therapeutic result, I ended up injecting enough of the antidote to induce instant withdrawal symptoms in the patient. With the patient now suddenly awake, I was faced with an angry, irritable, aching person who usually and somewhat correctly held me responsible for his ill-fated misfortunes. Inevitably, the fact did not register that mere seconds earlier he was unconscious and in respiratory arrest, minutes or seconds away from death or brain death. Thus I learned the hard way not to be too hasty or too generous with Narcan. I also learned that when the temporary curtain of opioid-based pain relief is pulled back quickly and completely, a raw, tangled web of pain takes its place front and center stage. It turned out that being slow and deliberate made me keenly aware of my patient's individual circumstances. On the surface was the struggle, the compulsion, the lack of control, the aggression, the lawlessness, and irritability. Yet just beneath the surface was a thinly concealed, deeper reality of omnipresent pain, physical, mental, and emotional, expressed in loss of meaningful connection and resulting loneliness, in shame and feelings of worthlessness, or in the shadow of utter despair or hopelessness. One day, a young lawyer, whom we will call Gene, had overdosed at home, and when he awoke after the Narcan ritual, he was miserable and in pain. He wanted to use the bathroom to relieve himself before we left for the ER. When he opened the door and came back out, I smelled the unmistakable scent of freshly burned cannabis. Gene suggested that he was fine and didn't need to go to the hospital. I checked him out, and indeed he looked fine. His vital signs were stable, he was lucid, and his physical pain and irritability had diminished. He articulated, and I am paraphrasing, that he was just doing heroin to feel okay enough to function, that he had been doing it for 7 years to keep the mostly mental and emotional pain at bay, and that he wasn't addicted. At first, I didn't think too much about it. After all, when you work in the emergency medical services, or EMS, pain is all around you. For 24 hours straight, 7 days a week, with no breaks on holidays, pain is everywhere. From one call to the next, you are thrust into another person's worst time of their life. Sadly, even outside the extremes of EMS, too often pain is omnipresent in some way, and it seems to be getting worse today. The use of prescription opioid analgesia alone has doubled over a period of 10 years, 2000 to 2010, with nearly a third of the entire U.S. population now using opioids. Think about it, and this is only one number. It does not include other pain medication or the use of opioids obtained in ways other than a legal physician-issued prescription. What is truly horrific is that the consumption of a mountain of painkillers does not appear to improve patient conditions, health, and well-being in the long run. The scope of lingering pain, the ongoing damage inflicted on body, mind, and emotions, the growing number of accidental deaths, and the associated societal costs are truly staggering. Such a high mountain also casts a very long shadow. Nearly everyone using opioids experiences some form of adverse effects. Some of them are on the milder side, such as constipation or itching, while others are more harmful in their nature, such as the suppression of one's breath, with a potentially fatal outcome, and the high potential for addiction in certain individuals. Here, too, the facts speak for themselves. Drug overdose deaths in the United States exceeded 64,000 in 2016, the majority of them, 53,332, being opioid-related deaths. Nearly 80% of heroin users started with prescription opioids. The gateway drugs to heroin are pharmaceutical opioids. But are opioids solely responsible for all this misery? The current evidence accumulated so far is insufficient, and even contradictory, in chronicling the actual risk of prescription opioid-based addiction rates, with estimates ranging between less than 1% to 56%. In direct contrast to the shadow side of opioid use are those patients who use opioids even for long periods of time and do not become addicted. So the emerging question is, why do some people get addicted while others don't? What makes a person vulnerable to becoming addicted? What fortifies another, and what makes someone seemingly immune to addiction? The opioid-related addiction and death crisis and the complex and underlying questions are not answered nor effectively addressed by the traditional and orthodox approaches. In fact, orthodox medicine is struggling to understand and correct how patients in need of effective pain control end up addicted and dying from those pills meant to help in the first place. Over time, I thought a lot about Gene the lawyer. It occurred to me that Gene might have demonstrated a novel solution to therapeutically